So which way's the dining side? Two ahead. And it's supposed to be super nice.
It is okay. You guys have 5 o'clock? All right, we made it.
What?
What's your reservation? 5 o'clock?
We didn't do it.
You got tickets. What time's your ticket?
Some of the stuff.
We get dinner. Ours was
It does make you wonder.
our original was
It is came back.
No, we went and got tickets for the discount in the bar.
It's just a cut. We're going to talk about.
I don't know. What do you got? You got a dinner?
You gotta go make orders to make more.
I don't think we may have dinner.
I don't know what it is.
I don't think we did. Our original train was
After.
Yeah, this is the same one. This is the nice one.
I don't know.
What does it say?
It's all Vancouver letter.
Fairly soon on our right-hand side, you're going to see a golf course through the trees. It's a little ways away, but when we get there, I'll give you a heads up on it. Behind the trees, yeah.
What happened to our friends who were right over there? I know, there's no place.
This golf course wasn't always here. In fact, what used to be here was the city of Vanport, which is a kind of halfway between Vancouver and Portland. And Vanport was a city that got built up during, or well, prior to World War II, and housed at most about 40,000 people. And the reason it had so many people was because the shipyards and other structures that needed to be built for World War II. Well, a lot of the inhabitants of Vanport were minorities, and Portland, Oregon, was not particularly friendly to non-whites, and so they shipped a lot of the minorities to Vanport, and that's where the minorities worked out of. Well, the city grew up to about 40,000 people, and then all of a sudden, in 1948, after the war, the Columbia River overflowed about 12 feet, 15 feet above flood stage. It had about, the residents of the town, which was by then about 16,000, had about 30 minutes to evacuate. I believe most of them got out, but the town was never rebuilt, and instead the golf course was built, which is probably an easier use for the land than a town that would get flooded all the time. We are now crossing the Columbia River. This will be one of 2 stages where we cross. This is one section of it. Then we'll cross on to go on to Hayden Island, which is between the 2 sections of the river, and then we'll cross into the other side of the Columbia River.
I think this is the
really beautiful.
Oh, yeah, but thank you. Look at that houseboat.
About halfway across our next span, we
So is half of Hayden Island going to Washington and then we have Oregon?
I believe all of Hayden Island is actually Oregon.
It's the main channel is what we're coming to.
Yeah, yeah, but there's kind of 2 branches here.
Come on.
2 years after that, 1980, a family was over here just west of here on the Columbia River and messing around camping, picnicking, and found $8,000 and rubber banded it together. They had serial numbers. Yes, that was money. There was another clue. They, kind of reignites the search for the FBI. Nothing. Couldn't find anything. Nothing at all. Finally, 2 years ago in 16, the FBI says, we're done. We're going to load up all our evidence, put it in boxes, and send it to Washington, D.C. because it's a cold case, and we cannot figure this out. They interviewed literally hundreds, thousands of people, I'm sure. Lots of people said, it's my uncle, it's my brother. Never could figure anything out. Well, just a year ago, after it was a cold case, a citizen sleuth group got together and reanalyzed that JCPenney's clip-on tie that the guy had left on the plane. That was the only thing he left. When they analyzed it with modern equipment, they found bits of pure titanium. Now, in 1971, who would have bits of pure titanium in this area? Any idea?
Boeing.
A machinist. Boeing. There you go. What was Boeing building in 1971? Titanium's not in 737s and 727s, but it's in the SST, which was their competition for the Concorde. And they were working real heavily on that at the time. So they said, was it a Boeing guy? Was it a contractor, engineer? Why did this guy have bits of pure titanium? The same group had a professor from the University of Washington who went back to that money they found in 1980, and he said, out in the elements, a rubber band dissolves in less than 6 months. He said that rubber band would not be there out in the elements. So there's another clue. Where did that money? Was it, in a box? Why was it still rubber banded together? Nothing at all. Well, so that's all they know about it. The unsolved, somebody's made.
That we're running pretty parallel to a river. This is still the Columbia River beside us. And it's a good-sized river, and it's still fully navigable by large ocean-going ships all the way up here. And one of the things that we're going to come to is a small town.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be your first call here for the 5:30 seating. You're holding that reservation. For 5:30, please find your way to the dining car. Your tables are ready upon entering the dining car. Just wait right outside the door there. Please wait for a member of the dining room staff to seat you. First call, 5:30 seating. First call.
At any rate, Colombo, Washington is named after a Hawaiian sailor that jumped ship. He decided he didn't like ship life, so he jumped ship and landed here and started working for the Hudson Bay Company. He was a pretty smart guy and married the local chieftain's daughter, so he kind of had a way to stay in good graces with the local natives. And so it's actually a really large port, and it can fully handle these large container ships. One you can see on the left of us right now.
Twilight. Just filmed at the high school.
Oh, yeah.
High school scene.
Yeah.
Coming up on our left, you're going to see a large totem pole. And this totem pole isn't native to here. It was carved by a person that actually is from the Alaska area. But the totem pole is the largest one in the world, carved from a single tree. A single western red cedar tree.
Right there.
And the reason this pole is here is because the idea was when the carver was doing it, it was to be in the 1962 Seattle World's Fair. Well, Carver did not get it done in time for the World's Fair, so the totem pole stayed here, and it's been here ever since. There's actually a park of several totem poles surrounding this one large, but even with train beside us, you should be able to see the top of the totem pole when it comes into view. I'll try and let you know as soon as possible. It's back there. It was back there.
Yeah. Passed it a while ago. big thing that looked like a totem pole.
That's
That's what it was.
I forgot that whole conversation.
There's a little one right there. There you go.
And that's our Leaker Park.
It's really confusing coming upstream.
You were looking at it. I thought you had it. It was next to the giant McMinimans.
I guess I wasn't quite looking at it. All right.
Real long. That's how you Yellow, black, red.
This Columbia River is a huge economic employer. A lot of stuff comes out of that by having that cheap river transportation to the ocean right here. Actually, the Columbia River is the third largest grain exporting corridor in the world. Mississippi's the first, and Parana, I always say it wrong, in South America. P-A-R-A-N-A with a little tick mark over the A. Somebody needs to tell me how you pronounce that. That river's number 2. The Columbia's number 3, which is pretty amazing. So a lot of grain gets shipped out of here, as well as the timber you saw back there gets exported. Generally, solid dimensional lumber is not exported for some reason. I don't know why that is. It's just the timber that's cut and debarked is exported. Imports are automobiles in Portland. You get raw steel that is transformed into thinner sheets for siding of buildings and whatnot, because we have really inexpensive electricity here because of the Columbia River. So things that need a lot of power come here. Aluminum smelter plants. Now Google server farms are here because of cheap electricity. But that's one of the grain elevators. It takes about 6
there's
trailers to fill one ship.
$76.95.
They come in and circle around, offload their grain, and put it on a ship.
Oh wait, no, never mind. Not him. I thought that was the $76.95, but it wasn't.
Those are all barriers. Oh my god. Okay, fine. I'm not those, but.
Columbia, or Kalala. The Cowlitz is on that.
Okay, folks, second call for the 5:30.
Notice all the bright yellow flowers in the swamplands. That's all skunk cat. It blooms this time of year. It's going to bloom.
It's not hydroponics, baby.
Right now we're running parallel to I-5. If we were going at full speed, which is about 79 miles an hour, we'd be passing most of these vehicles except for the ones that are speeding. Obviously, right now we're not going 79 miles an hour. We're doing 79 miles an hour. Yes, good best. I'm going at 47.
thought they were said we were making a plan.
We are 30 feet above sea level. That river's
Bring that on.
All these other beautiful yellow flowers you see everywhere, that's called Scotch broom. It's an invasive species, you can't get rid of it. It's actually kind of pretty this time of year, but the rest of the time it's not. The story, one guy, and I was trying to get to verify it, but it came from Scotland. He said it was originally packed in shipments of scotch as a packing, because it is kind of a rubbery stem, it's not a stiff metal stem. And it came over here, and that's how it ended up here. So maybe that's true. Anyway, it's a noxious weed out here.
God, I remember last year it was so dark going through here in
Must
May.
have been in the winter.
Yeah, it was last May, last May 18th. The train was so late.
Oh.
It came through here during dark.
There we go. This guy's got 2 Grumman goose. I want one of them.
Oh,
Those are
nice.
cool as heck. Yeah. Jimmy Buffett had one. I don't know if he still does, but those are cool.
Oh my God, that is so awesome.
And that Cessna 195, I think that's
Cessnas are nice.
yeah, they're good stuff.
I live not
This
too.
is Three Rivers Golf Course on your left side, a public golf course out here. Unique feature about it, it's all built on Mount St. Helens ash. And a couple weeks after the initial explosion on May 18th, there was a subsequent eruption that left all the ash on this side because of the way the winds were.
Come on down. On-board crew, double spot. Sweepers first, then pull the train up.
There you go. Anyway, so this was all swampy land like we've been passing through. They said, what are we going to do? And when I mean ash, I don't mean wood ash. It's actually pulverized rock. And so they decided to pilot up there. It's like a sandy soil, grew grass on it, and it's a public course. You can come down here and play golf on Mount St. Helens Ash. And it has the added distinction of being an excellent draining golf course. So in our wet winters, you can still get out there and play golf. This guy's got more Volkswagen stuff.
We're now coming into the area of the towns of Kelso and Longview. Kelso is on the right side of the train, and Longview is on across the river on the left side of the train. These two towns have always kind of had a rivalry and have never been able to work together very well. They have their own police departments, their own fire departments, their own sanitary systems, the whole 9 yards. And yet they're right across the river from each other. It'd be very easy to incorporate. But they've never been able to because Kelso is the older city. It was founded in 1884, but has about a third of the population of Longview. Longview was founded back in 1922 and has about 36,000 population. I suspect that the reason the two towns can't get together is because Kelso would like to be named, like the area be named Kelso because it's got the older history. But Longview obviously has the population, so they're not willing to part with their name either.
Full of old growth timber. It's absolutely stunning. Well, a guy that lived across from the park was noticing a lot of squirrels getting run over as they crossed the streets to this park. So he decided to build a miniature suspension bridge, kind of like the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. It's called the Nutty Narrows Bridge. They have the Nutty Narrows Festival every summer. Or that's not right. Yes, they are smart enough to use it. They even teach their young how to use it. This was in the 60s. Now there's 6 or 7 of these around the park, various places. It's a great place if you're driving I-5. Go over to Longview, get a bite to eat, and check out the park. It's really kind of cool. The Nutty Narrows. They have Squirrel Days or some festival over there, I forget.
This train station in Kelso is completely manned by volunteers. There are no hired staff. So volunteers meet every train that comes up and down the tracks throughout the day. And so that means there's 2 Amtrak trains each day, and then 8 of the Cascade trains coming up and down. So these volunteers work pretty hard to maintain just a volunteer unit here. And this is one of 2 towns that use strictly volunteers. The other town is Olympia.
I actually don't need those anymore, but thank you for offering. No, nobody wants to take those. It costs a freaking fortune.
Alright, that was Kelso. That stops in Australia. 40 minutes.
Yes, Centralia. Centralia. It's another 30 minutes past that. Yeah, so yeah, something like that. Well, we're as close to Mount St. Helens as we're going to get. You're not going to be able to see it from here, and you wouldn't. We have one spot by Chehalis, so you can get a glimpse of it, but not today with the low overcast. But I want to tell you the quick story about it, because you're going to see some of the remains of it as we go another 10 miles or so. Now, May 18th, 1980, they knew something was going to happen for weeks before this. Mount St. Helens has been a volcano that's erupted many times from Native Americans talking about it. Even Lewis and Clark saw some kind of event from it. But in May 18, 1980, they'd set up an exclusion zone around it. Weyerhaeuser was up there logging. They had a lot of virgin timber up there, the big old growth Douglas fir and things that was Weyerhaeuser land had bought from the railroad. So they made an exclusion zone a couple weeks before this, thinking, we got to keep people out, right? Well, the exclusion zone wasn't just a normal, say, a 20-mile diameter from the peak of the mountain. Now, if you look back at Google it and look at it, it's really cut up. And the reason it's really cut up is because Weyerhaeuser wanted to keep logging in there. Well, this mountain, Mount St. Helens, started bulging on the north side a week or two before it actually had the eruption, which was unusual. The scientists had never seen this before. They knew something was coming. They were worried about the north side because that's where the exclusion zone was only about 3 miles from the top of the mountain. Well, fortunately at least, it erupted on a Sunday morning, so you did not have loggers up there, about 8:30 in the morning. People died 17 miles north of the mountain that could not even see Mount St. Helens because they were below the ridges. So the sequence of events was the largest landslide in recorded history, immediately followed by a pyroclastic flow. And the pyroclastic flow is hot gas, 350 degrees or so, going a couple hundred miles an hour to the north, pushed down 220 square miles of timber. It just blew it down like toothpicks. Just phenomenal to see. And that was immediately followed by the ash eruption up to about 80,000 feet, which blew mostly east to Yakima, Spokane. Day turned to night over there. Lahar, which is an Indonesian melting snow, trinkets out of it or something. It's a lot of material came out of the mountain. It's estimated the amount of material, if you took a football field, which is roughly an acre, that football field 285 miles thick. That's how much material came out of Mount St. Helens, down the Toutle, down the Cowlitz. So a lot of material. I'll throw out one more fact on St. Helens that I find just boggling to me. Okay, the age of the Cascade Mountains are roughly 50 to 100 million years old. The Olympic mountain range is 10 to 15 million years old. Mount Rainier is about 1 million years old. Mount St. Helens is younger than the Egyptian pyramids. Most of the mountain is less than 3,000 years old. And to me, that just boggles me that that was the weak point in the crust or however that works. I'm not a geologist. But Mount St. Helens is a fascinating place to go spend an afternoon. Go to the Johnson Ridge Observatory. It's just a great national monument to go check it out and see what's done. A lot of it is still just like it was. Of course, it's grown back, but you can see down timber and see the results of that. You can even hike up there and get a permit and check it out. But it's worth a stop. And it's just east of us, maybe 20 miles or so.
My kids said this last time.
So what's your opinion on the Hawaiian volcanoes at this moment?
I haven't heard anything today. I don't know. That's pretty scary stuff. I know it's a big island, but still.
Yeah, my one of my family members was down there, and he said that the sulfur dioxide gas was horrible.
It smelled. Yeah, it's supposedly put down a lot of that. Yeah, I don't think I'd want to hang around downwind.
Yeah.
We are now in the area of the Cowlitz River, and the river is named after a local Native American tribe, the Cowlitz Indians. The Cowlitz are very good boat makers. They were able to make large, massive canoes to about an inch thickness after they poured it out with stone or wood implements. And they used to do all their trading up and down this Cowlitz River, which is on our left right now. There. And now that we've kind of just gotten finished talking about Mount St. Helens, we're going to spend the remainder of our time probably talking about Mount Rainier, because Mount Rainier now starts to have a big influence over this whole territory along here. And the Cowlitz River is the first river we go cross over of four that has its origin on the glaciers of Mount Rainier.
Now, did we already pass the points defiance area where you turn off to go to the points defiance bypass?
No, that's past the Lacey Olympic stop.
I think we opened that yet. Some of it is like you're looking at the back of the Star Wars area. So it's like not.
Actually, I was talking about, if you look to the left, you see that hill where, next to the tracks? That's all Mount St. Helens ash that was dredged out of the Cowlitz River. It's going to be that way until we get to the Tula River in a couple months. Then it's past that on the other side as well. Okay, if you look right, this is the Tula River, and there's the I-5 bridge. If you look at old video from the eruption, the I-5 bridge had 5 to 6 feet over the top of it. It kind of helped maintain the trestle that we just went over as well. So I-5 was shut down. About 57 people died in that eruption. It was quite a massive thing, but it's just east of us, 20 miles or so.
You'll notice a large number of yellow flowers on plants along the railroad tracks. And if you're not familiar with this area, all these flowering plants are called Scotch broom. It's a very invasive species, somehow transported over here from Scotland. And people pay money to have the plants there and grow so much. Almost one of the first plants to grow out of the land that is scarred. And so obviously along the railroad, the rest of the year it's just green and ugly.
It's one of the remaining round barns that get there. It's absolutely beautiful. I think early 1900s, there's 3 left in the state. They thought that was more economical way to build a barn as far as efficient. Like, didn't last, but anyway, it's still beautiful.
I saw it in my head.
Those of you not from Washington here, traveling along the forest, you might think, wow, Washington must be entirely forested, right? And that's kind of the impression people have of Washington. Believe it or not, it's only about 50% forested. You go from the Cascades east, it's not very forested at all. It is the second largest softwood lumber producer in the United States. Oregon's the first, Washington's second. That softwood is 80% Douglas fir. Pretty much most of the old growth forests are gone. If you want to see an old growth trees, you have to go to a national park, state park, some protected area. Pretty much everything has been logged at one time or another and grown again. So that's what you get a second and third growth forest.